There is a bird perched on a bare branch at the edge of your yard right now, or somewhere near where you walk each morning, and if you have ever locked eyes with it, really held that gaze for a moment, you may have felt something you couldn't quite name. Not the flicker of a sparrow, not the anxious scanning of a starling. Something steadier. Something that looked uncomfortably like it was thinking. Most people dismiss that feeling. They tell themselves it was a trick of the light, or anthropomorphism, or just the black glass of a bird's eye catching theirs at the right angle. But the science that has accumulated over the last 2 decades tells a different story. A story about a bird that does not simply react to the world, but reasons about it, plans within it, remembers who wronged it and who helped it, sometimes years later, understands what you are seeing and what you are not, grasps the concept of future time. We are talking about the raven. Welcome to the hidden mind of birds. Stay until the end, because the last thing we cover has to do with what ravens understand about other minds, including yours. And once you know it, you will never look at one of these birds the same way again. The jaraven has lived alongside human beings for longer than almost any other wild bird. In Norse mythology, Odin kept 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, who flew across the world each day and returned to whisper what they had seen into his ears. Indigenous cultures across the Pacific Northwest saw the raven as a trickster and a creator. Edgar Allan Poe made one of the symbols of grief and madness. Across continents and centuries, humans have always sensed something in the raven's eye that was harder to dismiss than what we see in other animals. It turns out that intuition was correct. It was just waiting on the science to catch up. The wee raven belongs to the corvid family, crows, jays, jackdaws, magpies, a lineage that has produced what researchers at the University of Cambridge now describe as some of the most cognitively flexible brains in the animal kingdom. But even among corvids, the raven holds a particular place. Its brain-to-body ratio rivals that of great apes. And what it does with that brain, when researchers have designed the right experiments to reveal it, is something that takes a moment to absorb fully. The first thing you need to understand is that ravens plan, not instinctively, but deliberately. Pay attention to this one because it cuts against a quiet assumption most of us carry, that planning for the future is a human thing, maybe an ape thing, a behavior that requires language, culture, and the capacity to imagine a self moving through time. In 2017, a research team at Lund University in Sweden published a study in the journal Science that challenged that assumption directly. They gave ravens access to a tool, a small stone, that they would need later to open a puzzle box and get food. The stone was available now. The box would not appear until the following day. Between the stone and the box, researchers offered the ravens other, more immediately appealing objects, items associated with immediate rewards, to see whether the ravens would drop the stone in favor of something with a faster payoff. They didn't. The ravens consistently held onto the tool, sometimes for up to 17 hours, carrying it through the night, ignoring distractions, to use it the next day. What makes this remarkable isn't just the patience. It's the internal structure required to sustain that behavior. The raven had to represent a future moment that did not yet exist, attach value to an object based on its usefulness in that imagined future moment, and then resist the pull of present temptation in service of that future goal. The researchers noted that the ravens performed as well as, and in some cases better than, great apes on the same task design. What this means for the way you think about birds is this: the next time you watch a raven turn something over in its beak, set it down, pick it up again, seem to pause, it may not be indecision. It may be deliberation. The distinction matters. The second thing is that ravens understand when they are being watched, and they change their behavior accordingly. This is the part that most people miss. Not because it's subtle, but because accepting it requires accepting something about animal minds that feels uncomfortable. Researchers at the University of Vienna, led by Dr. Thomas Bugniar, conducted a series of experiments in which ravens were allowed to hide food caches, storing meat or other high-value food items in locations they hoped to return to later. The complication: other ravens were sometimes present, watching. A raven that caches food while a rival watches risks having that cache stolen the moment it leaves. What the ravens did in response was striking. When they knew they were being observed, they became strategic. They created decoy caches, burying objects in one location conspicuously while secretly hiding the actual food elsewhere. They waited for observers to look away before making their real cache. They moved their caches after the fact if they suspected they had been watched. But the study went further. Bugnar's team then set up a scenario where ravens could hear the sounds of another raven on the other side of a barrier, but couldn't see it. The question was, would a raven that couldn't see a rival behave as if it wasn't there? It didn't. Ravens that heard the sounds of a nearby raven, even without visual confirmation, hid their food more quickly, used more decoy placements, and checked their caches more frequently. They were reasoning about what an unseen observer might know based on what that observer could hear. They were modeling another mind. This is called the theory of mind, the ability to attribute mental states to others, to understand that what you know and what another creature knows are different things. For a long time, this was considered an exclusively human trait. Then it was extended, cautiously, to great apes. Researchers are still debating the precise boundaries of what ravens possess, but the behavior in these experiments is difficult to explain without something very close to it. Stay with me here, because this matters more than it might first appear. If a raven can reason about what you know, based on what you can see, what you have seen, where you were standing, then your relationship with any raven you encounter regularly is not a one-sided observation. It is a mutual assessment. The raven has a model of you. It has been updating that model every time you have appeared. The third thing is that ravens remember individual humans, and they hold grudges. This has been documented formally, but any person who has spent significant time around ravens has usually arrived at this conclusion independently, through experience. John Marsloff, a wildlife biologist at the University of Washington, conducted a series of studies in which researchers trapped and banded wild crows, a close relative of the raven, while wearing specific rubber masks. The masked researchers were dangerous, individuals in the bird's experience. Other researchers wearing neutral masks were controls. When the masked researchers later walked the same routes, unmasked, in ordinary clothes, the birds who had been trapped years earlier still recognized the masks when they were worn again. They scolded. They mobbed. They recruited other birds who had not been trapped to join in the harassment, effectively teaching their social networks to treat those specific masked faces as threats. The recognition persisted for years. Ravens carry this capacity further. Field researchers who work with raven populations over long periods report that individual birds demonstrate clear, sustained preferences and aversions towards specific humans, aversions that are not random and do not fade quickly. A bird that has been harassed by a particular person, or that has seen a person handle a nest, will treat that person differently from others in the same group for months, sometimes longer. What this means is not simply that ravens have good memories, though they do. It means they maintain a social map that includes humans, assign us categories, trustworthy, unpredictable, dangerous, and update those categories based on accumulated experience. You are on that map if a raven has seen you more than once. You have been filed. The warmth of that, if you let it land, is remarkable. The discomfort of it too. The fourth thing is that ravens play, not just as juveniles, but as adults, and they appear to do it for its own sake. This one seems lighter than the others. It isn't. Play is cognitively expensive. An animal that plays is an animal spending energy on behavior that has no immediate survival payoff, which means play only makes evolutionary sense if what it builds is worth the cost. In most species, play is almost entirely confined to the young. Adult play is rare. It signals something about the kind of mind an animal is running. Ravens play throughout their lives. They have been filmed repeatedly sliding down snow-covered rooftops, hiking back to the top, and sliding down again. Not as a foraging behavior, not as a display, but apparently because the sliding itself is worth doing. They drop objects from a height and catch them. They hang upside down from branches for no discernible reason. They have been observed initiating play with wolves, otters, and dogs. Other species approaching them with an object and inviting a chase. Research published in the journal Animal Behavior documented ravens engaging in object play, manipulating, throwing, and catching items, as fully mature adults, in contexts unrelated to mate display or food acquisition. The researchers concluded that the behavior appeared intrinsically motivated, an intrinsically motivated behavior, a thing done because the doing of it has value in itself. There is a long-standing assumption that animals experience the world as an unbroken series of drives and responses: hunger, satiation, fear, safety, without anything in between that could be called leisure, or curiosity, or the pleasure of a task for its own sake. The raven's play does not fit that model. It suggests an inner life with room in it for something that looks, from the outside, very much like
the fifth and last thing, the one I told you to stay for, is what ravens understand about minds they cannot see. There is a concept in cognitive science called the attribution of mental states to absent others. It means, can you reason about what someone else knows, wants, or believes when that someone is not physically present? Can you hold a model of another mind in your own mind, update it, act on it, without that mind being in the room with you? This is considered one of the higher order marks of sophisticated cognition, and in ravens, the evidence for it has been accumulating steadily.
In 2016, research published in Nature Communications demonstrated that ravens who watched other ravens observe their food caches and then had those observers removed from the area still behaved as if the observers might return. They recached their food, covered their tracks, and showed elevated vigilance. They were acting on a model of what an absent mind had seen and might want to do with that information. They were not reacting to a threat present in front of them. They were managing a threat that existed only as a memory and a prediction inside their own minds. Dr. Kinkabadai, one of the researchers on the Lund study, described the raven's cognitive toolkit as built for flexibility rather than fixed solutions. Most animals are very good at the specific problems their evolutionary history has prepared them for. The raven is good at the category of problems, whatever shape they take, whatever novel situation presents itself. It improvises. It generalizes. It transfers a solution from one context to another. That is what human intelligence is, at its core. Not a library of answers, an engine for generating new ones. There is a raven, or a crow, or a jay, some dark-winged cousin, somewhere near where you live. It has probably seen you. It may have cataloged you already. What you wear when you appear, whether you are the kind of creature to be curious about or cautious around. It has probably faced a problem today, a cached piece of food, a locked container, a rival to outmaneuver, and solved it using something that, if we saw it in a child, we would call reasoning. We built thousands of years of mythology around these birds without knowing exactly why they unsettled us the way they did. We sensed the weight of the gaze without being able to explain it. Science can explain it. These birds are not reflections of us, they are not us, and the differences matter. But they are something the natural world has built independently along a completely different evolutionary branch that arrived at some of the same destinations. Foresight, social memory, the capacity to model another mind. The branch at the edge of your yard is not a decoration. Something is sitting on it, and it is thinking. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had a raven, crow, or jay recognize you? A moment where you felt certain it knew who you were. I want to hear the specific story. Where you were, what it did, what made you certain. I read everyone. I'll see you in the next one.